I want you to try and just take a second to remember a very specific moment in your life, a moment where you felt entirely, just flawlessly in the zone.
Oh, yeah, that is a great place to start.
Right. And I don't just mean, having a good day at work. I mean those rare, almost weird moments where the rest of the world completely falls away.
Like when you are just completely immersed in whatever you're doing.
Exactly. Like maybe you were playing a sport and suddenly you weren't thinking about your footing or your swing anymore. Your body just knew exactly what to do.
Hmm.
Or maybe you were painting or playing an instrument or even just locked into an incredibly deep conversation. Time just stops feeling like a ticking clock.
Yeah, the background noise just completely fades out.
Yes, the background noise of your own insecurities just shuts off. You feel perfectly in tune with the universe. Every movement is effortless, and like everything simply clicks into place.
It is such a profound sensation. You are describing that fleeting, almost breathless sense of absolute rightness.
Yeah, breathless is a good word for it.
The boundary between you and whatever you are doing just vanishes. You aren't just playing the music. For a second, you feel like you literally are the music.
That is the exact feeling. And I mean, we humans spend so much of our lives chasing that state, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. We build entire lifestyles around trying to get back to it.
Well, today's deep dive is entirely dedicated to unpacking that pursuit. We are looking at a translated 2011 essay by a writer named Shu Feng, and it's titled The Peak Experience and Bliss State of Life.
It's a fascinating text.
It really is.
Yeah.
And right up front, I want to map out where we're heading because this source text covers an immense amount of ground. We are going to start with some very recognizable Western psychology.
Right. The mainstream stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But from there, we take a pretty sharp, surprisingly visceral detour into the biology of human bodies. And eventually, we are going to unpack some profound Eastern mysticism and Buddhist philosophy.
Which is necessary, honestly, because the text is attempting to answer one of the oldest questions in human history. What does it actually take to exist in a state of ultimate unbroken joy?
Wow. Yeah, just a small, easy question for today.
Right. But what makes this essay so compelling is how it refuses to separate the clinical from the deeply spiritual. It forces you to re-examine what happiness fundamentally is, like from a structural level.
Okay, let's unpack this by starting with the clinical side. The essay opens with Abraham Harold Maslow.
Ah, yes. Maslow.
Yeah, if you've ever taken a Psych 101 class, you definitely know him for Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's usually drawn as this big pyramid.
Right, where you have to build up from the bottom.
Exactly. So at the wide base, you have your basic needs, food, water, shelter, safety. As you move up, you need like love and belonging. But at the very tip of the pyramid is self-realization.
The ultimate goal.
Yeah. And according to the text, the perfect symbol of reaching that peak is, appropriately, the peak experience, which Maslow defines as a, quote, strong identity experience.
Right. It's the psychological summit. Maslow basically views it as the moment you are most fully and completely yourself.
But Schaefeng's essay doesn't just leave it at that sort of abstract definition, does it?
No, not at all. He actually breaks down the mechanics of what this state looks and feels like in practice. He lists 18 specific characteristics of a peak experience.
I want to dig into those because going through that list of 18 traits is, honestly, it's pretty intense. It almost sounds superhuman.
It really does read like a list of superpowers sometimes.
Right. He describes this state as a moment where everything blends into one harmonious and integrated whole. He says a person in this state is in the best state as when a river flows vigorously.
That's a great visual.
Yeah, and another trait is being as unsophisticated and pure as a newborn baby, having what he calls abundant essence, key, and spirit, and just being so completely absorbed in the present moment that nothing else even exists.
What's fascinating here is how those specific characteristics bridge this massive gap between the internal mind and the external world.
How do you mean?
Well, look at what he actually means by being unsophisticated as a newborn baby. It doesn't mean being helpless or weak.
Right, obviously not.
It means acting without the cynical, complicated filters that adults build up over a lifetime. You aren't analyzing your actions, you are just acting.
Oh, I see.
And that ties directly into another characteristic he lists, which is becoming an integral part of nature by losing oneself and melting into it.
Oh, wow. Okay. I see where he's going with that. It's a striking paradox, really.
It is.
It reminds me of like the classic hero's journey in a superhero movie. You know, that moment where the protagonist finally unlocks their full
Oh,
powers?
yeah, the big climax of the film.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And they don't do it by trying harder. They do it by letting go. They stop overthinking. They stop struggling to control every little detail. And suddenly they are moving with absolute facility. They're just free from suffering and bursting with confidence because they've stopped getting in their own way.
That paradox is actually the engine of the entire concept here. You achieve peak self-realization by actually losing your sense of self.
Wait, really? Losing yourself to find yourself?
Exactly. When you are truly in the zone, the ego, that little voice in your head narrating your life, it goes completely silent. You just melt into the action. You become the vigorously flowing river rather than a person standing on the bank analyzing the water.
That makes total sense conceptually.
Yeah.
But I have to say, listing out these philosophical traits can start to feel a bit like reading an instructional manual.
Oh, sure. It gets very theoretical.
Right. The source text, however, doesn't stay in that theoretical realm for long at all. It shifts into describing what this actually feels like in a living, breathing human body.
And the language Huefeng uses, or, well, the quotes he uses, are incredibly visceral.
So visceral.
Mm.
The shift in tone is jarring, honestly, but clearly intentional. He wants to ground these lofty psychological concepts in flesh and blood.
Right. He wants to bring it out of the textbook and into reality.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Xu shares these vivid descriptions of people having a peak experience. One says, quote, "I feel like I am in heaven." Another describes a vague sense of vertigo.
Which already sounds pretty intense.
But then the descriptions get even more intense. Someone says that joy, pleasure, excitement, and thrill all make me madly joyous.
Mm-hmm.
There's a description of feeling like a rapid, high-altitude, screaming rocket with blood-rushing, absolute excitement where the physical body actually convulses violently.
It's a long way from the tranquil image of a vigorously flowing river, isn't it?
Yeah,
We've gone from peaceful newborn babies to screaming rockets and violent convulsions.
we really have. And then the essay reveals the twist behind these quotes. These are not descriptions of someone achieving a quiet spiritual breakthrough on a mountaintop.
No, they are not.
These are literal descriptions of reaching sexual climaxes. The text explains that Maslow conducted investigative reports spanning 5 continents, and he concluded that for the vast majority of mankind, there were essentially 2 methods to acquire these peak experiences: sex and music.
And according to the findings, sex is by far the most common biological pathway humans use to access this highest psychological state.
It's just built into our biology.
Exactly. The text describes it as an utter immersion without willpower. It is that exact mechanism we were just talking about. The conscious mind disconnects, the ego vanishes, and you are entirely locked into the present moment.
Tasting the ultimate sweetness of life in one concentrated instant.
Perfectly said.
But wait, this is where I have to push back on Maslow's conclusion a bit.
Yeah.
Because doesn't that feel incredibly reductive?
In what way?
Well, we are talking about the very tip of the human experience,
Mm-hmm.
the highest pinnacle of psychological self-actualization. And we are equating that ultimate achievement to a physical climax, like a temporary biological function.
Your frustration is completely justified, and it is actually the exact point Xu Wang is making in the essay.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He doesn't deny the physical reality at all. He acknowledges that a sexual climax is undeniably a peak experience. It hits all the psychological markers perfectly.
Oh, okay.
However, Xu Feng argues that humanity's reliance on sexual love is actually a comparatively low-level experience.
Oh, because it doesn't last.
Exactly. It's a biological shortcut. And the defining feature of any biological shortcut is impermanence. The screaming rocket always runs out of fuel and falls back down to Earth.
Yeah, gravity always wins.
The feeling of utter immersion always fades.
There's actually a great line in the text where a quote describes waking up from that high and being back in the dense fog of daily life.
Yes, the dense fog.
You get a 5-minute vacation to the peak of the mountain, and then you are right back in the trenches.
And this realization is really the hinge of the entire essay. It's where we leave Western psychology behind and pivot toward Eastern mysticism.
Okay, lay it on me.
Xu Feng contrasts this temporary, low-level physical high with the Buddhist concept of the Elysium world. Entering the Elysium world isn't about triggering a fleeting biological response. It is about attaining an eternal immersion in this peak state.
Eternal immersion. That sounds exhausting, but also amazing.
Right. And the logic is pretty straightforward. You cannot achieve a permanent, eternal state using a temporary physical act. To unlock an eternal state, the text argues, requires an enlightened heart.
So if the biological shortcut is fundamentally flawed because it's temporary, how do you actually build an enlightened heart? What is the blueprint for making this peak state permanent so you don't have to keep falling back into the fog?
Xuanming introduces a concept called self-harmony, and it requires a radical restructuring of how an individual operates day to day.
Radical how?
Well, to attain continuous peak experiences, you have to cultivate both yin and yang internally. You must become completely free from any reliance on an external sexual supplement.
The text uses the visual of the yin-yang fish from Taoism to explain this, representing a perfect, self-contained oneness.
Yes, that's a perfect visual for it.
I actually like to think of it this way. Normally, human beings operate like a smartphone with a terrible battery.
Oh, I like this. Go on.
We are constantly scanning the room, looking for an outlet to plug into, right? We are seeking an external power source, whether that's an external sexual supplement or external validation, or just a temporary thrill. We just need to get a quick 10% charge of that peak experience to keep us going.
That is a fantastic analogy. We are perpetually dependent on outside forces to manage our internal state.
But achieving this self-harmony is like becoming a perfectly self-sustaining terrarium or a closed-loop energy system. You don't need to hunt for an external outlet anymore because you have generated both the yin and the yang inside your own ecosystem. You basically become your own eternal battery.
But becoming an eternal battery is a monumental undertaking. Xufeng doesn't sugarcoat this at all.
No, he really lays out the work required.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, he outlines an enormous, systemic project of self-refinement to achieve this state, and he breaks it down into 4 highly specific requirements.
Okay, let's hear the 4 steps.
First, you must deweed your soul garden completely. Second, you must pay back all your debts from all of your past lives.
Hold on, let's stop right there. Past lives.
Yeah, I know. It's a jump.
We started this conversation talking about a 20th century American psychologist mapping human needs, and now we are talking about clearing debts from previous incarnations. That is a massive conceptual leap for you listening at home to process.
It is a complete paradigm shift, you're right, but it's necessary to understand Xufeng's overarching architecture here. Maslow was operating strictly within the confines of a single biological lifetime.
Right.
But Xufeng's argument is that if the temporary nature of the peak experience is rooted in our biology, then the solution must transcend biology. You can't solve a metaphysical problem with a physical tool.
So he introduces a multi-lifetime framework.
Exactly. Paying back debts refers to balancing a sort of cosmic karmic checkbook. If you cause suffering in a past life, that energetic debt is currently blocking your internal yin and yang balance in this life.
Okay, so it's essentially saying you cannot hold on to unresolved spiritual baggage if you want to reach eternal bliss.
Precisely.
Which brings us back to his first step, deweeding your soul garden. How does a person actually do that?
Deweeding is a metaphor for the aggressive removal of toxic internal traits. It means systematically uprooting greed, jealousy, anger, and that constant craving for external validation we talked about.
You're getting rid of the bad weeds.
Yeah, you have to pull them out by the roots so they stop choking the life out of your internal ecosystem. Only when the garden is clear and the past debts are paid can you move to the 3rd step, accumulating enough merits and virtues in heaven through righteous action.
Got it. And the 4th step?
The final step is ascension. Your consciousness must ascend to a perfect awakened state, akin to a celestial being or a Buddha.
Wow. So we are definitely not talking about taking a weekend mindfulness retreat here.
No, not at all.
This is a total reconstruction of human existence. But what fascinates me is that Xufeng doesn't just leave this as a thought experiment. The essay discusses a literal, real-world application of this philosophy. He talks about a physical place called the New Oasis for Life.
Yes, this is where the philosophy attempts to actually manifest in the physical world.
Soemi mentions that he carefully designed this oasis. Its locations, the planning, the environment, specifically for a group called the Chanyuan Celestials.
Right.
The idea is that they live in this community to experience a continuous peak state with the ultimate goal of attaining self-harmony and entering what he calls the celestial island continent to enjoy eternal bliss.
It is the creation of a utopian community engineered specifically to remove the external triggers that keep us trapped. Think about how difficult it is to deweed your soul garden when you live in a modern society driven by consumerism, comparison, and the constant marketing of those temporary biological shortcuts.
It's nearly impossible. Everything is trying to distract you.
Exactly. The new oasis is designed to be a physical environment that nurtures internal yin and yang balance by actively removing the worldly attachments that normally drain our batteries.
But even with a perfect physical environment, walking away from earthly, physical pleasures requires an absolute rewiring of how you perceive reality itself.
Oh, absolutely.
You can't just tell someone to stop wanting the thrill of the screaming rocket. You have to fundamentally change how they view the universe so the rocket no longer looks appealing.
Which brings us to the final and perhaps the most profound section of the essay. To explain how to actually achieve this rewiring, Woofing anchors his pursuit of eternal bliss in the ancient wisdom of the Heart Sutra.
The Heart Sutra.
Yes, this is the mechanism for dissolving the illusions that keep us trapped in the exhausting cycle of temporary highs and inevitable lows.
The text introduces a figure named Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. And for those unfamiliar, Avalokiteshvara is often understood in Buddhism as the Lord who looks down with compassion. And the essay explains that when this Bodhisattva attained enlightenment through profound wisdom, he realized something foundational, that all forms, feelings, thoughts, behaviors, and cognitions are nothing more than illusions.
This is the ultimate required paradigm shift to reach eternal bliss. The core teaching of the Heart Sutra presented here is that the tangible world actually originates from the invisible world. There are no essential differences between the two.
But our senses tell us otherwise. Right.
Exactly. Our physical perceptions, what we see, hear, smell, taste, and touch, are fundamentally misleading us every single day.
How exactly do our senses mislead us?
Well, they trap us in false binaries. Think about temperature, for example. We experience hot and cold as two completely opposite battling forces.
Good and bad, light and dark.
Right. But in the reality of physics, there is no such thing as a cold particle. There is only thermal energy and the absence of it. It's one spectrum.
That's true.
But our physical skin lies to us and says these are two warring realities. The Heart Sutra argues we do this with everything. We question our cognitions about good versus evil, life versus death, ego versus non-ego, and we fully believe these are real, solid, conflicting things.
Because our bodies feel them so intensely.
Right. But the Bodhisattva realizes that the true nature of the world is invisible and unified. Individuals and their intense sensory sensations don't actually possess the permanent, solid reality we assign to them.
So what does this all mean? The text explains that to break free from this trap, the Bodhisattva relied on a specific transcending wisdom to reach what it calls the shores of freedom. By leaving behind this distorted, illusory world, he overcame fear and worry to attain nirvana. And the essay even provides the great spiritual mantra used to cross over to this state.
Which is incredibly powerful.
It really is. Translated reads, quote, "Go, go, go. Go to the other shore with transcending wisdom. Go to the realm of freedom. Go to attain enlightenment soon. Just go."
It's a very active, urgent mantra.
But I want to pause here and ask a very practical question on behalf of you, the listener, because this can sound incredibly unmooring.
It's a very common reaction, yes.
If all our intense physical feelings, even the euphoria of the peak experiences Maslow documented, are technically illusions that trick us into false binaries, how are we supposed to actively live?
This raises an important question for sure.
Like, if the ultimate goal is to realize none of this physical reality truly exists, how do you find any joy in having a human body? It sounds almost, well, nihilistic.
I get why it sounds that way. That is the most common hurdle when confronting this philosophy, but it stems from a misunderstanding of what an illusion actually means in this context.
Okay, help me understand it.
The key lies in the text's specific description of the universe. It says that this illusory world has, quote, no true birth or death, being or non-being, defilement or purity.
Meaning, the labels we force onto reality are the problem, not the reality itself.
Exactly. The Heart Sutra isn't telling you to hate your physical body or aggressively reject the physical world. That would just be creating another false binary.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it would.
You attain supreme authentic wisdom not by rejecting the world, but by transcending your attachment to it.
So it's about changing your grip on reality, not escaping it entirely.
Yes. When you deeply recognize the invisible, formless nature of reality, you stop desperately clinging to temporary physical shortcuts like a sexual climax. You start panicking when the feeling fades because you realize that the physical form is just a passing expression of a deeper, eternal energy.
That is beautiful.
You achieve that state of self-harmony because you are no longer a victim held hostage by your physical cravings.
Mm.
You can finally experience the beauty and joy of the world completely, precisely because you are no longer enslaved by the fear of losing it.
Because you've built the internal battery.
Yeah.
You can appreciate the tangible world, but your peace relies on the invisible world. You go to the other shore with transcending wisdom.
It is the ultimate liberation from the dense fog of daily life.
Man, this has been a massive arc for a single deep dive.
We really covered a lot of ground today.
We started with Maslow's psychological hierarchy, looking for a clinical definition of human self-actualization. Then we explored the intense biological realities of physical climax and why those shortcuts ultimately fail us.
Mm-hmm.
From there, we mapped out the Taoist concept of internal yin-yang harmony, the 4 steps of self-refinement, and the concept of the new oasis. And finally, we ended up crossing over to the shores of freedom, deconstructing the illusion of reality itself with the profound Buddhist wisdom of the Heart Sutra.
It is a remarkable journey. It demands that you strip away everything you think you know about pleasure just to find something infinitely more sustainable.
It really does. And I want to sincerely thank you, the listener, for stitching with us on such a dense, mind-expanding intellectual journey today. It's not every day we get to systematically map out the architecture of eternal bliss.
Before we wrap up, I do want to leave the listener with one final thought to mull over, a little seed to plant in that soul garden we talked about. Oh, I'm ready. Plant the seed.
Early in the text, Shufeng points out that Maslow's research found 2 primary methods mankind uses to acquire peak experiences.
Mm-hmm.
We spend this entire deep dive deconstructing the first method, which is the biological mechanics and ultimate limitations of sex.
Right.
But what about the second method, music?
Oh, wow. We completely bypassed music.
We did. But consider music in the context of everything we just learned about the Heart Sutra. Music is fundamentally invisible.
Yeah, it's just sound waves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is entirely composed of formless vibrations in the air. It has no solid, permanent physical body. And yet, it has the power to profoundly move our physical bodies and our emotions.
That's so true.
If the tangible truly comes from the invisible, as the Bodhisattva realized, could music be the ultimate accessible bridge? A way to actually touch that pure, formless reality while still living inside a physical human body? What a beautiful question to end on. An invisible bridge to the ultimate flow state. Well, until next time, keep listening to the music, keep searching for those moments where everything clicks, and above all, keep questioning your illusions. Take care.